My girlfriend said my feelings were too much for her, so I walked out mid-conversation and never returned. I want to start this by saying I didn't think I was an emotional wreck. I'm not the kind of guy who cries during Disney movies or writes poetry on rainy nights. I'm 30, I work in data analytics, and I've always believed in being upfront about how I feel. Maybe not loudly, but honestly. But apparently, that makes me too much now. I met Danny 6 months ago at a trivia night downtown. She was sharp, funny, a bit sarcastic, kind of like if Aubrey Plaza had a marketing degree and a nose ring. I was instantly into her. We started talking over drinks, and I found myself laughing more than I had in a while. She had this energy about her, like nothing could faze her. Cool, detached, but still present. It was magnetic. Things moved fast. Within a month, we were seeing each other 3 to 4 times a week. She had her own apartment filled with crystals, succulents, and strange little hand-drawn diagrams she'd post on her fridge. One of them was labeled the Vibe Chart. I thought it was a joke at first. It had sections like neutral zen, creative chaos, emotional static, and doom spiral. I laughed when I first read it, and she just sipped her tea and said, "It helps me stay balanced." I didn't question it too much. We all have our quirks, right? But then, over time, I started noticing she'd refer to it in conversations. Like once, after I had a rough day at work, I'd missed a deadline due to a team member messing up a data pull. I vented to her. Nothing crazy, just told her what happened, how it made me feel overlooked. She listened but then tilted her head and said, "You're kind of in emotional static right now. I don't really have space for that today." I laughed, thinking she was being funny. She wasn't. I shrugged it off. One-off thing, right? Wrong. The next few weeks, I kept bumping up against this emotional boundary she had created for herself. It was subtle at first. She'd pull back when I tried to talk about something that bothered me, or she'd go quiet and just say, "I think you're kind of heavy right now." Once, after I told her about something personal, how my mom had a breakdown when I was in high school, and I had to basically raise my little brother for a year, she responded with, "Wow, that's intense. I'm not sure that fits my current vibe frequency." I stared at her for a second. Vibe frequency? Do you seriously have a threshold for human emotion? I asked, trying not to sound hurt. She smiled, kind of apologetically, and said, "It's not personal. I'm just really intentional about the energy I allow in my space." I spent a long time detoxing from codependent guys who overshare. It stung. Was she calling me codependent? I didn't argue. I just nodded, sat back, and let it hang in the air. That's when I realized something. Danny wasn't a bad person, but she had built a fortress of emotional detachment and painted it with pastel colors and vibe charts. And I, apparently, was too loud, too much, too messy for her curated peace. That night, I went home and thought long and hard. Was I too emotional? Or was I just normal and trying to connect? I replayed our conversations in my head. I wasn't yelling, crying, or trauma dumping. I was sharing, like people do when they trust someone. A week later, I tried to talk to her again. Nothing heavy. Just told her I'd been feeling kind of distant between us lately, and asked if she noticed it too. She tilted her head again, the way she did when something made her uncomfortable. And then she said it. "I think your emotions are too much for my vibe chart." No malice, just matter of fact. That was the moment something in me clicked. I didn't say anything after she dropped that line. "Your emotions are too much for my vibe chart." It echoed in my head while I just stared at her, wondering how someone could turn vulnerability into an inconvenience. There was a long pause. Not the kind that invites conversation, the kind that quietly shuts the door. I could have argued. I could have told her that emotional connection isn't a burden, it's the point of being with someone. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized the argument wouldn't be with her, it would be about her. About a belief system she had built so tightly around herself that no one could get in without disturbing the furniture. So I nodded. I smiled politely. I think I even said, "Fair enough." And then I left. Not just her apartment. I left us. I didn't block her. I didn't send a dramatic text. I didn't try to explain myself through some long message she'd probably only half read anyway. I just stopped showing up. Quietly. Calmly. Like someone turning the volume down on a song they used to love. The next few days were weird. I didn't cry or fall apart, but there was this dull ache in my chest, like my body hadn't caught up with the decision yet. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit. I'd open Instagram and almost tap on her story, then pull back. I didn't want to see her drinking turmeric lattes and posting healing energy only quotes while I sat with my very unhealed feelings. I told a couple close friends about the breakup. Most were supportive. One of them, Kyle, said, "Man, that whole vibe chart thing sounds like emotional avoidance with a Pinterest filter." It made me laugh, but it also made me think. Danny wasn't a monster. She never yelled at me, never ghosted, never cheated. But she had this belief that protecting your peace meant shutting out anything uncomfortable, including people who were trying to be real with her. And maybe that's a kind of self-preservation, but it's also kind of lonely. About a week after I left, she texted me, "Danny, hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" I stared at it for a while, not out of indecision, but because I knew whatever I sent would be the last thing. I thought about being vague. I thought about ignoring it altogether. But in the end, I replied honestly, I think I just realized I'm not a vibe. I'm a person, and I need someone who doesn't treat emotions like bad weather." She read it. No reply. And that was it. I won't lie. There were days after that where I missed her. Her laugh, the way she made playlists for every occasion, her dry humor. But I didn't miss feeling like I had to filter myself just to be palatable. I didn't miss feeling like a guest in my own relationship. About 2 months later, I saw she'd updated her profile bio. Energetic alignment only. If you're chaotic, please keep walking. And honestly, good for her. She knows what she wants. And now so do I. It's been almost 4 months now. Life moved on, the way it always does. Work got busier, my brother came to visit from out of state, and I started running again, something I'd neglected during my time with Danny. Funny how being with the wrong person doesn't always feel wrong until you finally breathe without them. I've been on a couple of dates since then. Nothing serious, mostly just conversations over coffee or drinks, swapping stories about past jobs or favorite movies. But here's what I noticed. I stopped second-guessing when to share something real. I don't rehearse what I'm about to say in my head anymore. I just say it. And the people who lean in and listen, I stick around. The ones who flinch or check out, I let them go. One date in particular stuck with me. Her name was Leah. We met at a bookstore event. She was holding a copy of Attached, and I joked that it was either a green flag or a big ol' red one. She laughed and bought me a coffee. We sat and talked for over 2 hours. I told her about my past relationship. Not in a bitter or dramatic way, just the facts, and a little of what I learned. I told her about the vibe chart, and she laughed so hard she nearly choked on her croissant. But then she got serious and said something I'll never forget. "You know," she said, "people think boundaries are only about what you don't want, but they forget the other half. Asterisk what you're willing to let in. Asterisk if you shut out anything messy, you also shut out everything meaningful." That hit hard. Danny had her system, her boundaries, her frequencies, and they worked for her. But I realized I don't want a curated life. I want one that's lived in, where the couch has a coffee stain and the playlist skips sometimes, and yeah, emotions come in messy waves, but they come honestly. I used to think being emotionally open made me weak. Maybe because guys don't really get a lot of room to be vulnerable without it being weaponized later. But I've learned it's not weakness. It's just clarity. Knowing how you feel, saying it out loud, and being okay if it's not okay with someone else. That night, after my date with Leah, I walked home past Danny's street. I didn't mean to. It was just part of my route. Her apartment windows were dark, probably asleep, or maybe she moved. I didn't feel anything sharp or heavy, just a kind of calm closure. I remember looking up at the moon, cold and full, and thinking, I'm not too much. I was just too much for the wrong person. That's the thing they never tell you. Sometimes the way someone reacts to your emotions says more about them than it ever did about you. And sometimes, the quietest exits are the most powerful ones. So yeah, I left quietly. But now, I speak loudly, with who I am, with what I feel, and with what I know I deserve. Thanks for listening, Reddit. Stay loud, stay kind, and never shrink to fit someone else's chart. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.